Hi. Clip 8A, Green Coat Renewables, continued. It's the 6th of August and the evenings are starting to get a bit shorter and darker. The weather changed, a bit wet. Anyway, I just want to look at the Director of Corporate Enforcement. Now remember, back in 2008, the bold Patrick Nyberg told the building buccaneers, "Good on you, Willie, and good on you, Paddy." And he went off on his big pension. And then we had the Patrick Nyberg Report. And it was found that there was no proper regulation, no proper controls. The economy overheated and they gave more tax breaks. And I suspect this is happening again. And I just want to read from my dossier and just show you the experience I had. Now, what I've written here is this: anyone who thinks this agency will intervene is making a serious mistake. Here we have a €6 billion wind industry where serious issues are raised and nothing is done. The Companies Act 2014 states that the financial reports must be true and fair and give a true and fair view and comply with financial reporting standards. Section 291 says a P&L, that's a profit and loss, and account and balance sheet must be submitted. Right? Section 252 and 253 of the Companies Act 2014 allows smaller companies to submit abridged financial statements. I'm shouting a little bit here just to make sure you hear me. Please don't think I've been rude, I'm not. There must be a balance sheet, and readers should note that the balance sheet must include figures from the profit and loss account showing losses actually accruing. Certain notes must be included in the return. Now, just for those who don't understand it, big companies must put in a profit and loss account showing what their turnover and their expenses and all that, administration costs. Smaller companies can leave that out, but both must put in a balance sheet, and it includes the figure from the profit and loss account and any accrued profit and losses building up. Okay, so that's all right. That's normally been done. So now, an example now that I took up with the Director of Corporate Enforcement was Mountain Lodge Wind Farm, number 343257. It's near Coot Hill, and it's been whirling around there for years, and I just wonder how it was doing. So the years are 2016 and 2015 that I checked their accounts, and the actual called up share capital is €100. I mean, that's pathetic. €100 wouldn't hang one of the gates on it. And I repeat this again, €100. This is what the dossier says. So this large wind farm with dozens of turbines shows equity is only €100. The cost must be borrowed. So they must have borrowed the whole lot after that. So I went on then to see what did they actually borrow. Next is the balance sheet. This is a complete blank. Repeat, a complete blank. Blank. Right? There's nothing on it. So the only entry is the €100 called up shares, which is irrelevant really. It means that all they have is €100 shares. They borrowed the rest or they got it from somebody else. There's no P&L account figure at all. No profit and loss account figure in the balance sheet. There are no assets in the figure. There's no creditors in the figure. There's no debtors in the figure. No figure for long-term debts. Right? So I wrote to the Director pointing out this with the intention of bringing about a greater scrutiny of wind farm accounting practices generally, and with the intention that he must insist on compliance by all companies, because if they don't put in their accounts, how are we going to know what they're up to? The Director replied in writing that unless Mr. Martin could point out the commission of a crime, he would not become involved, unless I could show a crime was committed. The upshot of this was that the Director of Corporate Enforcement is neglecting to carry out its functions when serious failures are drawn to its attention. Now here's the Irish law, folks. Under the Irish criminal law, there are 2 degrees of breaches of the law. There's a summary offence, triable in the district court, without the option of a jury. That's drunk driving, no insurance on your car, having no licence on your dog, all that sort of stuff. There's no jury in that. That's the district court, essentially. You read about it in the paper. Having no TV licence would bring a district court penalty as well. Okay, and then there's a felony, triable in the higher courts with a jury, but in less serious cases triable without a jury in the district court with the consent of the accused. So for stealing a bar of chocolate, if the accused consents, he can be convicted and fined in the district court with his consent. But you cannot take a person's good name in a district court without them agreeing, even for stealing a bar of chocolate, because that's a slight on your character. That makes you out to be a thief. So you have to agree to be dealt with in the district court. And you can agree to be dealt with in the district court and plead not guilty. You can say, I didn't do it, but I let this court decide. But you can appeal that, okay? The difference is you don't have a jury. But strictly speaking, for stealing a bar of chocolate, you can go into the circuit court and insist there be a jury trial. Okay. So now, I'll read that again. A felony triable in the higher courts with a jury, but with less serious cases triable without a jury in the district court and with the consent of the accused. Some criminal offences are hybrid, so that the Director of Public Prosecutions can choose to try them summarily in the district court or on indictment in the circuit court. They're known as hybrid offences. So they can be tried in the district court without a jury, tried in the district court with the consent of the accused without a jury, or tried in the circuit court, and there has to be a jury there unless the accused pleads guilty. The common meaning of a crime is an offence triable on indictment. The director's reply indicates that only crimes are investigated by him and not offences. This interpretation is legally nonsense according to me. The Mountain Lodge Wind Farm failed to comply with section 290-352 of the Act, of the Companies Act. Right? So let's see what that failure is. What does that failure actually do? Section 2919 clearly states that any company which fails to comply, or any officer which fails to comply or defaults, is guilty of a category 2 offence. This is now for not putting in your return. This is a hybrid offence, carrying a maximum penalty of €50,000 or 5 years in prison, or both. Right? €50,000 or 5 years in prison, or both. The directors of Mountain Lodge have submitted a blank sheet, which can be a felony, a crime. There are issues of mens rea. Now, just to explain to you, in the case of if you're stopped on the road with no taillight and you didn't realise it was gone, the guards don't have to prove you knew. They don't have to prove you were guilty. Small summary offences like no television licence, no driving licence, even drunk driving, they don't have to prove that you had the guilty mind, that you knew what you were doing. You mightn't even know the taillight's gone. Doesn't matter. You can be fined. That's because it's a minor offence and your good reputation is not at stake. Nobody's going to say to you down in the pub, you had no taillight, you're a blackguard. That's because it's a minor offence, and they can't have minor offences where you have to prove what they call mens rea, or the guilty mind. That's Latin for the guilty mind. Okay. Now, however, in the case of an indictable offence, you have to show that the person had the guilty mind. So for stealing the bar of chocolate, the person accused must have the guilty mind. He must have intended to steal it. Whereas for the taillight, he doesn't have to. You don't have to prove that. He doesn't have to have any guilty mind. He's no taillight, that's it. When he steals the bar of chocolate, you have to show it wasn't a mistake or an error, or that he meant to pay and forgot, or it slipped somewhere, or whatever. Okay? Now, So I deal with that in the dossier. So it follows then, I say here, that complaints from members of the public to the Director of Corporate Enforcement will be ignored. In other words, unless you can prove it's a crime, he won't investigate, even though it is a crime. Wind farm companies could and have provided blank balance sheets and get away with it. We say regulatory environment is hopelessly inadequate. Right? Section 12 of the Director of Corporate Enforcement Act 2001 sets out the functions as follows for the Director: to enforce the Companies Act, to encourage compliance with the Act, and to investigate suspected offences under the Act. That's his duty. That's why he's being paid. We are not saying every little deviation from strict conformity should end up in the court. We want at the standard of compliance which the Act, the shareholders, lenders, creditors and concerned citizens are entitled to be enforced. I do not want a limited company produce blank information. That's illegal. They might as well be a pop song. In other words, the whole Raws might as well be a song. Nobody gives a hoot about them. The implications for Irish financial accounting probity are too obvious to itemise. It simply beggars belief and proves that the Director is failing in his duty. I'm accusing him of that straight. To ensure financial statements give a true and fair view. This is precisely what Patrick Nyberg warned against, and it's happening again. Now I'm reading, folks, here from our dossier, which I'm very proud of. We point out that long-term debts owed by a company and reported in the balance sheet do not include repaying share capital. Right? The debts are different to shares. A healthy company must pay its borrowings and have enough over to pay shareholders and dividends to pay off all investors before the end of the life of the project. Shareholders effectively own the company, and if the company is worthless and they get nothing, it's their loss. That's their problem. But they're entitled to the information. They're entitled to know the accounts are true. It is vital to understand that lenders must be paid interest and the principal. Shareholders do not have to be paid anything. And if the company is wound up or sold, they must be paid from the sale or disposal. The reason we mention that is the whole idea of financial reporting of limited companies is to allow everyone to be informed. They have to give up a bit of their privacy in order to allow everyone to be informed. And as a result, they get the corporate veil. They don't have to put their own assets on the line if there's a wind-up. A lot of what we report here could be prevented if the Director did what he was paid to do. They have failed before. The Director should be asked to comment. Right? I asked them to do that. Now, after I submitted my dossier, now remember, I got a letter on that unless the crime was committed, he wouldn't investigate. So I sent him my dossier. Cost a bit to print it, €8 to post it. And the next thing I got back this letter. Dear Mr. Martin, on behalf of the Director of Corporate Enforcement, I acknowledge receipt of your complaint of the 24th of June 2019 in respect of Mountain Lodge Wind Farm Limited and other named companies. In the event that issues require to be clarified, an officer of this office will be in contact. That's all right. No problem contacting me. He got my phone number. The Director regrets that it is not always possible to advise complainants in detail of the progress of any case. He's not going to tell me, right? In other words, hump off with yourself. We'll carry out the investigation and dare you intervene. Because this may compromise the conduct of the office investigations and any subsequent enforcement action. So you go into the guards and you report that somebody hit you on the street with a stick. You don't have to comment on the thing, but they can tell you, right, we're investigating it, we have found somebody, and we'll hear in course. But in this case here, he's telling us that it could compromise to tell me he's investigating. But he does say you will be advised of the outcome of the deliberations in due course. Now, we'll see what happens. All I want is that the message goes out to companies, especially these wind companies, that they got to put in the report. They got to put in their annual return, and I must be able to get it for my €2.50 a go. I have learned so much For years I've been saying wind farms are insolvent, can't work, they can never do any good to anybody, and they're no good to the owners either. And now, because they're trying now on the radio to get people to invest in them, they're a catch penny. And people are going to get hurt badly. Now, the point about it is that it is amazing that the director originally told me he wouldn't investigate it. And then when he realised my dossier was going a bit further to the Dáil Committee of Public Accounts, he decides to investigate. And I didn't ask him to investigate the second time. I sent him my dossier. I believe this dossier is a powerful document. I believe it's a powerful document. And we eventually forced them to consider it. Because it shows that bankruptcy looms. And there has to be some way they're going to get them out of the problem they're in. So just to rehash now and all that, and that's the end of that. There's my attempt. There's my letter. There's my attempt to get the director to act. He originally told me to hump off at myself and give me a totally false understanding of the law. But when I pointed out the law to him, he comes along and he promises he's going to do something. Now, if he doesn't investigate non-compliance, how is he going to expect compliance? I mean, we all drive on the particular side of the road because we know if we don't, we'll have an accident. If you're putting in, we all tax our cars. The guards only have to catch a small number of people with no tax because the rest of us try and do it as best we can. If they had to continually catch everybody, if everybody refused to tax their cars, refused to pay insurance, the guards would be very busy, the courts would be chopped up, and you would have a very difficult situation. So if you don't enforce the thing, people are not going to comply. And this is what we have. And I find this about every single regulator in the Irish Republic. They won't get involved. They don't want to know. And nobody cares a hoot. So folks, I hope that makes it clear. If the Director of Corporate Enforcement or anyone wants to take issue, they know where to find me. They're paid to do a job. They have to do it as best they can. And the first letter indicates to me he didn't want to do his job. And what else is going amiss? Because the whole idea of limited companies is that you have to be open about your finances. Right? And that's it. So with that now, and thank you very much, and I'll sign off tonight. Good luck. Good luck.